Here's my ranking of all the movies in the Fox X-Men universe. What's up guys, welcome back to Superhero Legacy. My name is Liam, and in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of the films within the Fox X-Men universe from worst to best. This franchise lasted over 20 years, and while it did have many atrocities within it, it wasn't all bad. In fact, they did some things phenomenally, so let's go ahead and get into it. Please remember that this is only my list, it's not the right one, but with that said, in last place, I'm going to go with New Mutants. For me, this movie is extremely forgettable and very uninteresting. I can appreciate that it went for its own unique horror style, and I like the idea of deeply scarred mutants being unsure of themselves, but I can't deny that it had many issues. Unfortunately, the movie was a product of bad circumstances because it was re-edited over 25 times, constantly delayed, and finally released in the middle of the pandemic. Number 12 is going to be X-Men Origins Wolverine. Now this movie started off strong with the opening montage of Wolverine and Sabretooth being brothers in arms, and I love the rivalry they had with one another and the relationship they carried over into the third act. However, the special effects in here are atrocious, and the movie itself is all over the place. I like that they included Deadpool as part of the Black Ops mutant team, but when you take away the most important feature of a character called the Merc with the Mouth, everything interesting about him goes out the door. Number 11 is Dark Phoenix. This movie somehow butchered the Dark Phoenix saga for a second time, which was incredibly disappointing. The villain was remarkably bland, and there wasn't enough done to make me actually care about what was happening to Jean. None of the characters were particularly compelling, and the overarching story was severely undercooked. Now I do think it had pretty good action at times, and I loved the space mission at the beginning, but none of it was able to compensate for the lack of passion it had. Number 10 is X-Men The Last Stand. As a kid, I absolutely loved this movie. Seeing Magneto move the bridge was cool, and I really liked the final battle, but unfortunately this movie tremendously suffers from too many cooks in the kitchen. It was trying to tackle way too many plots, and it had way too many characters. It'll always hold a special place in my heart because of nostalgia, but its many issues keeps it from being any higher. Number 9 is X-Men Apocalypse. I can think of 3 moments in this movie that hold it up for me. The first being the Quicksilver scene at the mansion, the second being Wolverine's cameo where he escaped the facility, and finally that beautiful scene of Magneto losing his family and succumbing to anger. Aside from these, the movie offers nothing else that holds my interest. They wasted the incredible talent of Oscar Isaac on a half-baked interpretation of Apocalypse, and many of the characters were underdeveloped. The CGI is also kind of iffy at times, and the story itself feels repetitive and uninteresting. Number 8 is X-Men. This movie receives massive credit for paving the way for the superhero movie genre, and it did a pretty good job of setting a solid foundation for the X-Men. It captured the essence of this team well, introduced some great characters, and clearly established the conflicts regarding the mutant gene and how it should be viewed, which is incredibly important. I don't think it has aged particularly well, but I do still think it's a solid film that deserves more appreciation. Number 7 is The Wolverine. This movie showed the true potential that a character like Wolverine can hold when given his own solo film. Since we had more time with Logan, we got to see more sides to this broken character, and we saw some of the things that hold him back. I liked the action, I liked the Japanese setting, Hugh Jackman gave a great performance, and most of all, I liked that it felt detached from the rest of the universe. Unfortunately, the third act loses a little bit of my interest, and there's nothing about it that makes it particularly memorable or special. Number 6 is going to be X2. This is a great example of how to do a sequel the right way. It took everything that worked about the first film and expanded on top of it. The opening scene with Nightcrawler is so good, and overall this movie explored deeper themes, had bigger stakes, more interesting characters, a well-paced narrative, and more emotional moments that made the third act feel earned. Number 5 is going to be Deadpool 2. This one suffers a little by trying to do too many things, and there are times when it feels like the humor is forced, but who am I kidding? This movie is just as thrilling and entertaining as the first one. The action is bigger and more intense, the jokes are more audacious, and I loved Cable's character. This is just another fun action adventure that's not doing anything but trying to give you a good time, and for me, it accomplished that task. Number 4 is going to be X-Men Days of Future Past. This one did a masterful job at finding a compelling narrative with high stakes in a creative way that merged 2 generations of X-Men casts. I like the concept of time travel, and I like the mission that Wolverine was sent on. Quicksilver had another great scene, and I love the sense of urgency that the film had. There are times where I feel like the concept of this movie is a little better than its execution, but overall I like how dark, how intense, how clever, and how intentional it all feels. Number 3 is X-Men First Class. This is by far one of the better X-Men movies, primarily because it's the one that feels most like an X-Men movie. It has team dynamics that are palpable, and it takes time to explore the characters and the conflicts. Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy are at their best here, and the focus on Magneto and Charles' relationship makes you invest into the incongruencies that they have later in the film. At its core, core, this movie is about friendship, having a shared dream, and making things work until they just can't anymore. By the end, you can really empathize with Magneto and see how his actions are somewhat justified, and I love that he doesn't hold back. You can look into his eyes and see the years of tragedy, the years of hurt, and you immediately understand how those dark experiences of his past would resurface and overtake him. The villain is good, the story is good, but most of all, the characters are all good, and it feels like an actual team. My runner-up is Deadpool. This is a movie that shouldn't exist, but wow, am I glad that it does. It has intense action, creative humor, and a great origin story. It manages to effectively balance the dark moments with the comedy in a way that doesn't distract you from the narrative. This movie showed that rated R comic book movies can be successful, and in my opinion, it's the funniest comic book movie, and also one of the most rewatchable comic book movies out there. It had a cheap budget and a brilliant performance by Ryan Reynolds. Number 1 is of course Logan, and I don't have to say very much about this one because I think many people would agree. I think that Logan is the best comic book film to this day. In fact, I never knew that it was possible for a comic book film to reach these heights before Logan. This movie serves as a deep character study into Wolverine and fully leans into the harrowing tragedy that envelopes Logan's wretched life. This movie does an incredible job making you feel the hurt and the agony inside of him and using that to drive personal stakes. Instead of going bigger, this film manages to go deeper and hones in on the characters and the journey that they go through. It explores mature themes such as death, pain, regret, loneliness, loss, and sadness, and this movie is all about Logan finding his purpose and going through a satisfying redemptive arc. It's beautifully poetic and true to the character, all while having an emotional backbone that makes me cry every time I watch it. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Please like and subscribe for more superhero content and share your thoughts on my ranking of the X-Men Fox universe down in the comments below. You can check out some of my other videos right over here, but for now, thank you so much for watching and stay super.